There are 9 mistakes students always make when it comes to note reading, and I know for a fact you're making some of these too. But we're going to go from most obvious mistakes to least obvious mistakes, so make sure to stick around because the really important stuff is towards the end. Mistake number 1 is that you have inconsistent reading methodology. You need to be reading notes the same way every time to get the fastest and most consistent results. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Say I'm learning the first measure of this minuet for the first time. Now here's what you don't want to do. Oh, this is an A and this is a C, I guess. And no, that's an A and G. And you're jumping all the way around. And say you're not even writing these in. So by the time you get to play it, you get to this note here. And you're like, oh no, I don't even remember what that was. And then you got to figure out all the notes again. There's 2 rules to this. Rule number 1 is read from the bottom to the top. So you're actually going to be reading G, B, D, D. And I'm doing this mostly in my head, but if you're just starting out, you can write them down. And this also helps with identifying chords as well, because chords are identified by what note's on the bottom. And you're going to learn more about that in music theory. But once you play that, you're basically playing them in a column. Then you move on to the next note, which happens to be by itself. And there's that A by itself as well. And then when you get here, you have 2 notes going on. Should you read them bottom to top? Yes. Remember, it's always bottom note first, then the top note, even if you're playing them at the same time. Mistake number 2 is not checking the clef before you start playing. And this is a much bigger deal than you might think. Okay, I'm going to give you an instance where this will show up in an exercise and how it will show up in a real piece that you're playing. So say I'm not paying attention to the clef, right? And I'm reading through my note cards. And this is an A. Oh, is this a B? No, you have to check your clef because especially if you have the cards mixed up, it could be changing between each one. Now let me show you in like real life music how this is going to come into play. Say I want to learn the second movement of this Pathetique Sonata. And I'm starting from this first measure here, and I'm just going to jump right into it, right? I've been playing piano a long time. I don't need to think about stuff. So let's try it. Let's get this pen out of my way first. Wait, something's very weird here. That doesn't sound right at all. Well, guess what? If it doesn't sound right, it might not be. And guess what we missed? That there's actually double bass clef. Yes, it's true. If you're just starting out, maybe just starting out playing piano, you don't know that this is a thing. But yes, you can have both hands bass clef. And all that means really is that you're playing notes lower with your left hand anyway, and they want you to play these notes towards like the lower end of the middle of the piano. That's most commonly when you're going to see that. And this is how it's actually supposed to sound. And you're going to be surprised, even in easier music, towards the beginning, you're going to see little clef changes pop up here and there. So please, please pay attention to the clef. The next tip might seem a little obvious, but trust me, it's something that I still make more frequently than I should. And that is that you're not paying attention to the key signature, or you are paying attention to what key you're in, but you're not internalizing where those sharps or flats are. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Say I'm learning this Sonatina in C for the first time by Clementi, and it's one that a lot of us have probably heard before. And I'm looking at the beginning, and I can see that there's no key signature, no sharps or flats anyway. So we're probably in the key of C, and I can check that by looking at the first measure here and seeing that they are outlining a C major chord. Like if I play all those notes at once, looks and sounds pretty C major to me. Now that's not the part that will trip you up probably. What will trip you up, I mean it could trip you up in the very beginning, but just like we can change clefs in the middle of a piece, we can also change key signature. And when you're playing through it, you might not notice it first, because some of your key signature notes might not happen. See, I played that first line and like, that sounds beautiful. I didn't mess anything up. But let me continue. I mean, that sounded okay, but that's what it's supposed to sound like. And I would have totally missed that if not for adding in that one flat B flat. So be aware of your key signatures, but also where they may change. Back to the piano real quick. One thing I want to mention, and I did mention in the very beginning of this mistake, about the key signatures, is that people often will be like, okay, I have one flat here, but they don't think about where is that flat on the piano, or that there's two flats, where would they be? So make sure you actually chart out where those flats are going to be on the piano, and actually learning your scales is perfect because we're in the key of F major here, and by playing the F major scale, it shows you the layout of the keys. Wow, there is a point to learning your scales. Mistake number 4, learning to read music and then never practicing it again. And this is an easier mistake than it might seem, because the first few weeks you're probably going to be practicing on some flashcards or some exercises on musictheory.net or something like that. You'll be like, all right, I'm pretty good at these. Put them aside, and then you start playing music, right? And the music you might play only might have certain notes in the treble clef or something like that. And for months at a time, you might only be playing a certain select notes. The perfect example is like notes on the clef, right? Every good boy deserves fries, face, all that stuff. But then what if you start having pieces with ledger lines, those lines that go up and down off the keyboard? Well, it really helps to continue to reading your music. In fact, I have a story. It's story time, everybody. When I was a kid, this is coming from a very personal place, because when I was a kid, I learned my treble clef. We played a lot of treble clef pieces. And then we only played treble clef pieces for a while, because if you see these books back here, that's kind of how they are organized in the beginning. You're practicing a lot of treble clef stuff, and then a lot of bass clef stuff, and then stuff together. So I was practicing just the treble clef, learned the bass clef, but didn't practice it again. Well, guess what? We had bass clef pieces again, and I didn't even know what note that is. What note is that? It's an A. So make sure to continue practicing reading your notes. The next question you may have is like, how long should you practice? And I would say a year. Note reading mistake number 5 is that you're not learning your ledger lines, or you learn them once and then you never practice them again. It's just like reading notes on the staff. You should be spending ample time on the treble clef notes on the staff, bass clef notes on the staff, but then you also need to be practicing your ledger lines. This isn't that big of an issue at first, because you'll be reading a lot of music on the staff, but then they'll start sneaking back in those ledger lines, and what'll happen, if you're anything like me, is you'll get there and then you'll be like, oh man, I haven't been practicing my ledger lines. I don't even remember what these are. Except that won't happen to you, because you're a student of mine and you're going to learn from my mistakes, right? So make sure to practice your ledger lines even after you learn them. Before we move on to the next mistake, I want to quickly mention that there's an easy way to figure out your ledger lines, and that is that the lines on the staff are equal to the space going up off the staff. So if these lines are E, G, B, D, and F, these spaces are E, G, B, D, and F. Same thing with the bass clef. Just careful that you're using the bass clef notes. Now the spaces of the clef, F, A, C, E, are equal to the lines going up off the staff, F, A, C, E. Same thing with bass clef. Just, make sure to use A, C, E, G, the bass clef notes instead. Mistake number 6 is ignoring music theory or rudimentary skills. So things like scales, arpeggios, chords. Knowing all of these things will help your brain fill in that information when you come across that stuff in your sheet music. For scales, arpeggios, and all that other stuff I mentioned, I highly recommend you check out this book. It has everything you need in it. I believe it is by Alfred's Basic Piano Library. I'll try to remember to include a link in the description, but you're probably wondering also, where do I learn about music theory? And I have some courses over on my website, pianolessonsontheweb.com, which will teach you everything you need to know. But this book is also a great supplementary book to go along with it, because it has a lot of practice exercises. It even has some notes and lessons in it as well. Highly recommend you pick up both of these. And while I'm on the topic, is book recommendations something you want to see on the channel, like me doing videos, reviewing a book, or maybe a more broad video talking about the different books that you might need as a piano player? Let me know in the comments if you want that. Reading mistake number 7 is relying too heavy on memorization, and I have a second little mini story arc to go along with this one. I had this student named Trevor. Trevor actually was kind of like a prodigy, and actually, forgive me for saying this, Trevor, he was actually not very fun to teach because he was very stuck in his ways. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. Trevor's main problem is that he was very, very intelligent, and he would read a piece like one time, and it would be in his memory. And then I would realize during the lesson he wasn't even reading the music. He was literally just using his memory. There's a big problem with that. Trevor's memory, like all of our memories, are not perfect. And over time, doesn't matter how perfect you think your memory is, little imperfections will work their way in there. You'll miss a note, or you'll miss a rhythm, or maybe you missed it from the get-go and you weren't actively reading through your music to correct your mistake. So that's the biggest thing of why you don't want to just rely on your memory, is if by actively reading the music, you're going to pick up on more mistakes, more notes. I'm telling you, there's pieces that I've worked on for years, back in music school when I used to do a lot of recitals, and my piano teacher would be like, you need to like read through this section again. And I would do it throughout the week, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've been playing this piece for a year and I've been missing this note every single time. So please actively read through your music. It's okay to use memory, like if you're playing for a recital or something, but even when you are practicing for a recital, you need to make sure that you're still practicing, like every few playthroughs, actively looking at the music. Reading mistake number 8 is like an anti-mistake because it's not paying attention to rests. So it's actually, you're not reading the spaces in between the notes. Let me show you an example of where this will always trip you up. Okay, the spot you are likely to mess up in terms of rests are right here. Now, why do I say that? And what is the problem going on right there? Well, you see how you have some notes before it? No duh, right? Well, what every student will do, like 99% of them, and you may be the 1% that doesn't do this, they will hit this note and they will keep holding it through there. And because music theory wise, it won't sound wrong, they'll never catch the mistake. So here's what it'll be like. See? You couldn't really pick it out. It wasn't like there was a wrong note. You know, when you hit a wrong note, you know. But this thing with the rest, it's not as obvious. So you really, really, really got to watch out for it, because if you hold the notes over, it messes up the melody. That's part of the melody. And really the melody is supposed to be this. See, and that kind of creates a break before the next notes come in. If you hold them over, it's going to blend everything and you're going to lose a lot of that musicality that the composer intended on. So please pay attention to your rests, especially when you have notes before that typically if you held over, you wouldn't notice the mistake. Number 9 is going to blow your mind. It is the biggest, most important tip I have for you. And you're going to go like, what, dude? The mistake. Are you ready for it? Drum roll, please. It is looking at the music while you play. Did you get it? It's looking at the music while you play. Now think about that for a second. You're like, how's that possible? Well, I know I'm not supposed to look at my hands. You know, your piano teacher probably told you not to do that. So what am I talking about? Well, let me show you. Okay, scenario. I'm learning this sonatina, and I'm just starting out for the first time. Now, and I'm starting from the first measure, and my question to you is, where are my eyeballs? I know they're in your head, but like, where are they looking? And if you said right here, you are wrong. Yes, really. I know you're like, where is this going? Well, this is where it's going. So when you are reading, and this is something that I have not talked about on the channel at all before, when you're reading, now this is after you're past the initial stages of reading, because when you're just starting out, you're not going to be able to do this. But when you are reading, technically, you're supposed to be looking, even if I am right here in the music, you're really supposed to be looking somewhere between here and the entire next measure. So you actually want to be reading ahead a beat or two, and that's actually going to help a lot with being able to look forward and identify patterns quickly. Now let me play this example and I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing. So when I start here, my eyeballs are about here. There's an eye, you know, there it is. And then when I'm here, my eyeball is probably going to be around there. And what it's going to help me do, well, let me play it first and then I'll tell you how it helped me out. I just made a mistake. Did you notice what it was? I did. I held that C too long. It only holds for one beat and then immediately there's rest. So I told you that rest thing gets me too. I just wanted to point that out. Now let me play it. And by looking ahead, it really helped me with this leap here and then down here, because by the time I got here, I could see that there was a scale kind of going down there and that we're going to have to jump from that G right there. So looking ahead might seem impossible at first, but it's not. And it's something that if you haven't started doing and you've been playing piano for a while, it's the #1 thing you want to start practicing when it comes to note reading. Like I said, I've never mentioned this before, at least in the YouTube channel. I have one final tip for you, which is actually really going to help take your note reading to that ultimate level that you need to become a great piano player, since you have to read the notes really fast and know them like the back of your hand. I first want to say, before you get to that tip and tell you what it is, it's a secret. But before I tell you what the secret is, I just want to quickly say thank you so much to all those that have supported the channel over the years, from the mods, the regular viewers, the people that enroll in courses over on pianolessonsontheweb.com. Thank you so much. Now for the final tip. If you are truly serious about learning your instrument, learning how to read music, you probably have one question in mind. How long is it going to take? And kind of how should you approach learning your instrument anyway? Well, this lesson right here, how long it takes you to learn piano, is what you want to watch next. It has all the information you need, and just go watch it. Your piano teacher, Tim here. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.